him, he was just involved in the social justice, human rights world. And he and I started working together. And I asked him, I said, what does your community need to understand that we're in this together? And what does my community need to learn so that we're better allies? And that's what actually helped birth that, was making that relationship of understanding and connection. So that's a very long answer, but I feel like that kind of analysis is what's important, because otherwise it's just a Band-Aid, and I would rather get to the disease. I would rather us work on the disease as we're working on the symptoms, so that hopefully we can eventually get our human family out of the emergency room and get ourselves into a more holistically healthy place. Thank you. Anybody else?
In Alaska, a tiny amount of the oil revenue is invested into alternative energy conservation companies, returning an equal annual dividend to everybody in the state, including children. So everybody feels empowered, like they are owner, and they are responsible for protecting the resource from politicians giving it away. And every time a politician takes a bribe, people vote him out of office because it would affect their dividend. It comes from the land grant school funding mechanism that we're supposed to have in this country, which is a sharing of the resources from the land for common purposes. Have you considered the Citizens Climate Lobby efforts to do the same thing nationwide, where all carbon coming out of the ground or polluted products coming in from other countries where they're not paying their costs over there would return an equal annual dividend to everybody in America, including children, so that we'd all have an interest and the resources to invest into insulating our homes or solar.
Great.
And each year it would go up and up as the value increased?
Great, thank you. So what you're speaking to is the particular lens of how we can create economic benefit that really supports making right choices. Because right now we have a lot of economic benefit for making bad choices. And the example I use for that is like, why is everything that's good for our bodies, our communities, our world, and our planet called the alternative? Like, our language is so powerful. It's such an amazing microscope into our minds. Everything that's good for us is called the alternative. How did we get to that place? We got to that place because we, through our tax dollars, subsidized the infrastructure of everything that's bad for us. People will say, well, why is making the right choice so expensive? Partly because we didn't use our tax dollars to create the infrastructure. All the things that it takes to make one choice of what I buy has a whole infrastructure that's a part of it. We have used our tax dollars to create an infrastructure that channels all resources into the hands of a few at the expense of the rest, including the planet, including future generations. So the point you're bringing up is, how do we create economic incentive for doing the right thing and economic disincentives for doing the wrong thing? This is happening all over the world. Unfortunately, in America, one of our biggest challenges is that we're addicted to comfort. And as an addict, I can speak with authority on this one. Because addicts will make choices that are harmful to self and others and defend it. And we're making all these choices that really aren't healthy for us, aren't healthy for each other, that aren't healthy for other children and future generations to come, and be like, I don't have a problem, what's your problem? Like, that's how we behave as a society. You look at the news and everybody's just being like, it's your fault, no, it's your fault, no, it's your fault. Yeah. We're like these kids running around, making a mock and throwing a temper tantrum and getting nothing healthy done. So our challenge in America is that because we are, and the reason why I say we're addicted to comfort, and I know that we are, is because we're not willing to risk yet. We see more and more people willing to take that risk, but as a society as a whole, we're not quite yet willing to risk what it's going to take to be truly free. If I hold on to this desk, how far can I go and how fast can I get there? When I let go of it, how far can I go and how fast can I get there? We're so afraid of losing our comfort, and starting with afraid of being made fun of, afraid of being ostracized, afraid of, then it goes on to afraid of being attacked, afraid of losing our home, our car. I don't want to disavow those feelings as real, because they are, and at the same time, the greatest changes in history and in herstory, both, have been directly related to people taking great risks. Always. You know, like any issue you think about, any privilege we take for granted today came because somebody took great risk. It wasn't because some white men in office had a transformational enlightened moment and decided to make a change. Like, sorry, that's not what's happened. It's when people on the streets, risking death, arrest, threats, for everything we can think of. Like you pick any issue that's a right or a privilege today, it came because people have fought hard for it. So yes, the point you're bringing out is important, this idea of economic incentives and disincentives. The sad thing is it's not a new idea. but America as a whole is kind of like has their heads in the sand. And also our system has been so stolen from us that it's not we the people for the people anymore. It's we the corporation for the corporation. And it's gonna take some major agitation and some major involvement to shift it, which is why we elected this person that I, along with many other people, was excited. I was excited to see someone other than a white male in the office. Unfortunately, much of his behavior is of white patriarchy. And so it breaks my heart, and I'm not saying, you know, white men are bad, I don't want you to hear that. I'm talking about systems here, not people, right? So the system of white patriarchy is a system that says a particular color is more important, more special, more powerful, and then a particular gender is. And it's a system that has created a lot of pain and suffering and harm. And we elected a new person and got a lot of the same results. Not all, but many of the same results, in part because our system is broken. And it's going to take a lot more than just voting for a president to change the system. And making the economic incentives and disincentives happen is going to take a re-energizing of the base to demand that happen. Thank you.
Was anyone arrested that was helping you when you were in Luna?
Was anyone arrested that was helping me? No, actually never happened. Part of it was we were just really sneaky and creative. And then part of it was eventually they just, so much attention was on the company that they literally just did this hands off. Like at that point, my ground support could go up and down, and they would run into loggers sometimes, and they needed to get away from the loggers because sometimes the loggers were aggressive and violent. But for the most part, it became a totally different action probably about a year into it, because the company was just like, okay, the whole world is watching. I caught them on videotape trying to kill me with the helicopter. Their PR person said, "We didn't do that. Miss Butterfly is lying." And then the CNN interviewer person cut to the video clip that I took of them trying to blow me out of the tree with the helicopter. "Oh wow, you didn't do that? Well, how did this video come about then?" So after that kind of stuff happened, they were like, "Okay, we'll just leave her alone and hopefully she will calm down." So after that, it got to the point where it was not really a risk for my team. But for the first year it was. There were many times, including the night that I first hiked up, we thought we went in late enough, and I was taking the logging road because it was very dark and there's not real trails up the mountain, and all of a sudden I heard these loggers coming down the road. I was like, oh my God, I guess I had a late day. And I had 100 pounds on my back. And I took a run off into the woods to hide, and my foot caught on a vine or something, and I went flying, and 100 pounds slid up over my head, and I was face first down in the mud, and my arms were like this because of the pack. And I just had to like lay there and not make a sound because I didn't want to get caught and try not to choke on the mud. And then after I heard them go by, the amount of time it took me to get back up, that was a whole other action in and of itself. So it was a threat, but it never happened. There's another hand behind us.
What was your average or everyday meal that you eat?
My average or everyday meal. I am a joyous vegan. I always say joyous vegan because when people hear the word vegan, they usually think bland, boring food and angry, judgmental, pissed off activists. Hopefully I'm not that activist, and hopefully I also make really good food, which all my friends can attest to. And I chose to be a joyous vegan, well, vegetarian beginning when I was 14, because I did grow up experiencing a lot of violence as a child. And one day I was riding my bicycle and I saw this baby calf in the field, and I pulled my bicycle over, I went up to the fence, and the calf came and nuzzled my hand and looked me in the eyes. And I had this aha moment of all the times I had trusted people and they'd hurt me. And I had this realization that these animals trust us and I don't actually have to hurt it. And I had never heard the word vegetarian. This was before the internet. I was 14 years old. I was living in Arkansas. I probably was the only vegetarian in the state at that point. I had never heard that word. I just went home and said, I'm not eating animals anymore. Because I just knew in that moment, I just didn't want to do that. I didn't have to make another animal hurt or be scared like people had done to me. I didn't want to do that to them. So that turned me into a vegetarian, and there's been a lifelong journey of learning and educating myself about the impact of what we eat and how we eat and how far our food comes from. So living in the tree as a joyous vegan, my meals were just, I told them, try and get me as much local as possible. Don't get me food shipped from thousands of miles away. And joyously vegan. Because I had a single burner camping stove, it also made me realize how much we waste in our lives, how much we don't think about. My team had to pack up the propane and pack out the empty container. So I really thought about every time I turned on that stove, and we don't think about that in our privileged world. We don't think about what happens